Have you ever wanted to get involved in real estate development, but didn't know where to begin? Do you think real estate development is only for the large hedge funds or major corporations, the big guys? Or have you done some development in the past and are looking to scale up? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then this podcast is for you. Welcome to the W.I.R.E.D Wealth and Real Estate Development Podcast. I am your host, Nick Smith. Get ready to have your mind blown and rewired as we discuss all aspects of creating wealth and real estate development. Good morning, everyone. This is Nick Smith. I am the host of the W.I.R.E.D podcast, Wealth and Real Estate Development, where we talk all things wealth in communities, wealthy families, and wealthy individuals through real estate. I am here on site. If you've been following the show or if you're watching this via YouTube, you could probably see the surroundings are a little different. I'm actually here on site today at the Gate Church in Hammond, Indiana, with Jay Calaway, who is the senior pastor of the Gate Church and also founder and president of InnerMission, which is a nonprofit organization here in Northwest Indiana that we are definitely going to touch on. Want to wish everybody a Happy New Year, Happy 24. Those that are watching, this is actually my first taping of 2024, so definitely want to wish everybody a happy and blessed 2024. But Pastor Calaway, how are you doing today, sir?
I am doing fantastic. And Nick, can I just say what a wonderful honor it is to be here. I've been looking forward to this ever since you reached out and said, hey, you want to go and have a conversation? And so we're really excited about being here today and really looking forward to what's going to happen in 2024 in the housing market, in how housing and development can enhance a community, all of that. So yeah, we're excited. So thank you for letting me be a part of this.
Awesome. No, it's truly my pleasure. And thank you for allowing me to use your home, for lack of better words, to say your house. This is God's house, but thank you for allowing me to use your facilities and come chat with you and visit with you.
Well, it's an honor.
If you can, briefly give us the Cliff Note versions of your background, where you're from, how you ended up here, and kind of what you're up to right now.
Yeah, well, you know what? This week, we are celebrating 35 years of being here.
Wow.
This week. And so my wife and I, we came right out of college. We had 2 kids, and we came up here.
Where are you originally from?
Springfield, Missouri.
Okay.
And when I did my undergrad, we came out, and I graduated early, and so we came up here on an invitation of the pastor. Okay. And of course, I kind of hesitate to share this part because it shows my illiteracy of geography, but I really had a heart to be in the Chicagoland area, and I received a call right at the beginning of January of '89 saying, hey, I hear you'd like to be in Chicagoland. And I said, yeah. And he goes, how'd you like to come to Hammond, Indiana? And my next question was, what does that have to do with Chicago? But anyway, so needless to say, 35 years later, we had one other child. We have 3 kids. They're all 3 married. And now we are on our 10th grandchild.
Wow.
And so it's been an incredible, incredible life, of which every morning my wife and I wake up, we feel like we're starting brand new, just seeing what new adventure we can be a part of. And so that's really how it started. We were student ministry or youth director / associate. We kind of just did whatever needed to be done in the church. And then about 3 years after we had been here, we became the lead ministers of the church.
Wow.
And that began a road that was so exciting for each one of us, my wife and I, because we really started seeing what a church could do to impact the community. Mm-hmm. Not just meet on a Sunday or a Wednesday or get a bunch of people in a room, but kind of treat the room as a locker room to inspire, encourage, and then the rest of the week we're, on the field, if you would. I'm a big football fan, and so, kind of getting on the field with the practice field, training and doing things. And then when it came time to get out there and do some stuff, we did. And it just happened in a unique way that housing became a very important part of our whole idea of how are we going to impact. And so that's a good portion of that is how InnerMission, our nonprofit, was started, and all of that.
Awesome. Now, how long has InnerMission actually been established? And just for listeners, viewers, we're not saying intermission. This is InnerMission. So
InnerMission.
INNER mission.
Yes,
InnerMission.
yes. So it's interesting because when you ask how when it started, the very first thing that InnerMission was our youth group. When before we even moved here, we were dreaming about being a youth pastor and all of that, and came across this name, and it became our youth group name. But then when we became pastors, we brought in other youth ministers, and things began to transpire. But I just felt like there was something more for that name, InnerMission. And through the course of that, in 1994, I think it was, the mayor of Hammond came and talked to us and said, "Hey, we're needing some help." And we'd expressed interest in helping, and we'd had a soup kitchen and some different community things that would help people. And so we listened to him. We had breakfast together, and he just explained some things. And immediately he said, "Do you have an ability to accept grants and things like that?" And so through the course of that, we developed the 501c3, called it InnerMission, with the idea of you first have to work on the inner man before you can ever go out and be a mission to those that are outside of you. And that's kind of what the whole idea of InnerMission was, and still is today. And so we started it with working with people in any realm to helping them see their vision become reality.
Gotcha.
And through the course of that, it's begun to transpire that now our whole concept of InnerMission that started there in 95 is when we started the whole endeavor, that now has come to where it's become that we're taking a person from surviving to thriving.
Surviving to thriving.
Yeah. And so any tool, any program, any ministry, any relationship, anything that we could ever see to use to take a person from a surviving thing, whether it's a food program, an education program, whatever it can possibly be, we look at it and we say, will this help? Will this take a person that's just barely surviving, whether it's in their education or surviving in maybe not knowing where their next meal is going to come from, where they're going to sleep. They got a place to sleep tonight, but where is it going to be tomorrow? Whatever the case might be, we say, okay, we can use that and make it from surviving to thriving and becoming a functioning person, a good functioning person that can help others in the community.
Gotcha. In taking a person from surviving to thriving, from your experiences working with InnerMission and just being involved in ministry, period, how important and how critical is the housing component of it?
I would say it's foundational. It is very foundational. In fact, in Scripture, Jesus talks about where there were moments in time where Jesus, he was even homeless, where it says there, the Son of Man did not have a place to lay his head. Then he talks about how that we should not worry about anything because God will provide things, but he lists the things that he will provide, and one of them is shelter in housing. And so those are areas that I feel like it's so important, because if you ever look at, I think it's Maslow's hierarchy of need, and he talks, one of the things that he can do is if you get a person that is not worried about their food, if they're not worried about their shelter, if they're not worried about certain things, then they can move into another level. But if you have a person that's constantly worried, it's just a survival mode. They get into survival mechanisms. And so one of the things that we did is early on is realize this is something is key and crucial. And it happened in a moment for me that it was an experience. Where we're sitting here has been the location of our church for 113 years now.
Wow.
And we've been on the same street and this is the same building that we're in right now as where I was the youth pastor and all of that. There was a very unique experience that I had early on. It was I was 23 years old, and it was within a month of me moving here. And I'm sitting in my office and I receive a call from the city. And they asked if I would be willing to help out with neighborhood cleaning and said, with me being the youth pastor and stuff like that. And I said, sure. I'm the kind of person that, you put a package of hot dogs with a grill and you can make anything a party, including a cleanup.
Barbecue.
That's right. With a group of young people. So we did. Well, the land that they were talking about ended up being the land that circumferenced our facility, and it was a defunct railroad station and a defunct housing project, all of these kinds of things. And so I jumped the fence and started walking around and found that there was roads back in the area and everything else. And I jump up on a tree, fallen tree that I was going in and just to look at all the land and everything. And I've always been one that likes to, just I go into abandoned buildings. I go into woods that have no trails.
Man
type
after
of
my
thing.
heart.
And so I just love it. And so I ended up going in, and when I jumped up on this tree, I thought everything was it looked like it was just a full dead tree on that. But when I took the next step, I fell through one of the branches, and I landed in. And when I landed down on the ground, I looked up, and there was a man sitting there. And I thought to myself, I haven't been in this kind of environment at all, and I thought I was dead. And at that moment, he backs up, and I startled him, and he startled me, and we both back up, and I look up, and he immediately looks down. And Nick, at that moment, I learned a lesson there. He was homeless, and that was his home. And he was living not even 100 yards from the church that I'm sitting in, talking to people about somebody that wants to give them hope and salvation, meaning Jesus. And I was stunned. This is where he lives. But what more shook me is the look on his face. And it wasn't he was coming after me or mad that I found him or anything else. It was shame. It was embarrassment. It was something that he was not proud. There was no pride in the good sense of being proud of what he's accomplished or anything else. And at that moment, I realized that I need to do something. I immediately jumped up and I got out of there and I apologized and I walked. And it moved me so much. I sat down on the curb there and really just wept and thought, God, what am I doing here? What is going on? And from that moment on, I realized that if I can provide housing for people, then there's a way I can actually provide thriving for people. Not just surviving, but thriving. And it's a tool. And so to me, housing became and developing and homes and everything else became simply a tool for us to begin to use to open up the door for people to move from a surviving, a hopeless, a shameful, whatever the case might be in their place, to where we could speak into their lives and become a partner with them to bring them from a place of surviving to thriving, to bring them from just a person in the crowd to somebody who would be a core of the kingdom of Jesus Christ.
Wow. I've heard you tell that story a few times before.
Yeah.
And every time I hear it, it never gets old to me. I love it. And it shows really how we can be so close yet so disconnected.
Yeah. That was something that still moves me in a great way, because I never want to move. I never want to get away from that moment.
Yeah.
I never want to get so far away from that moment as we've talked before. And now that place, we were able to acquire that property, and we've acquired most of the property all around us to the level that now there is a 3 or 4 story elderly home, senior living complex there. The place where we're around, we've built townhomes and villas and helped people get into home ownership. But I never want to get away from that moment of realizing that where I was sitting, studying my messages and trying to do something as a church, there was somebody not even 100 yards away that was living in the fork of a tree because he was homeless.
It was a defining moment.
It was, it's one of those moments where I feel like a lot of times in the Bible you see those moments of marker moments where that Joshua was it Joshua that puts the stones down after they leave and says, you need to mark this place because your kids are going to come and ask you, what is this for? And it was the moment that God says, you need to mark this because you've never gone this way before. And that's what it was for me.
I've always wanted to ask you this in response to that story. Have you ever run into that man?
I have not. From that, I say that, but Your vision's a little shaky when you dive in or fall into a man's home. that I'm not really sure if I ever have or not, but I don't think so. At least he hasn't come up to me and said, "Hey, you were in my living room a few weeks ago." But yeah, no.
Awesome. Wow. So I know with InnerMission, the mission of taking people from surviving to thriving, we talked about, the housing component of, but you all have actually delved into the realm of, I believe you have like a domestic violence shelter or some shelter in the area.
Yeah, so what we realized early on is that just, taking a person from surviving to thriving doesn't mean you just pull that gentleman or pull somebody that's living on the street or basically is on the street. Even if they have a couch or a bed they're living in, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's a home that they can call home type of thing. And so we learned early on that that's a process. It is a process of walking, a person through that is going to have to build a relationship. So it's not just event-based type of things where we, bring in hundreds of people and feed them on a day or whatever and then send them on their way, but to actually build relationship with them. And so we started building partnerships, and now we have everything from a 90-day shelter, people that are homeless, that they're able to come in, and that goes into like a 6-month to almost a 12-month. And then we bring in the idea of helping them get into different places. We help them take care of their, furnishing their apartments. And then we partner with different organizations, whether it's, like you said, domestic violence or somebody that they get kicked out of their apartment and then they can walk in there young. We're finding a great need for housing and shelters for single moms, especially the young ones. We've got girls that are 16, 17, 18 years old up into 20s, in their early 20s that either they've just found themselves pregnant or they've got a baby and they have nowhere to go. The moms and, says, "Hey, there's no room for you and a baby here too, so you're out," or whatever the case might be. And so there's all different kinds of survival that you come into, but they all start at a place where a lot of life skills aren't there. So we have an entire program called Thrive that we've just established that helps walk people through on an educational level. And so, so there's the shelters, and then transitional housing all the way through. So, but housing's a huge part. It's a big part.
Wow. You touched on the development, of course, that was surrounding, or the land that surrounded the church that you did some exploring and walking around. Kind of take me from what that development looked like that land looked like when you came to where it is right now. What was there when you first arrived, and then what does it look like right now?
So when I first arrived in there was streets and burnt out cars and tires and just all kinds of junk. In fact,
it's a junkyard.
It was junkyard. And that was what that's how I found it, is the city first called and just said, "Hey, this is what we need you to do, is we need you to help. If you could just take all the junk and all the things that are in the wooded area." It was a 55-acre piece of property.
Wow.
That at one point in the early 30s, I think it was, even maybe earlier than that, it was a turn station for the trains that would come in to bring coal into downtown Hammond. And they would dump their coal down onto the big turntable. It was down underground, and then the coal cars would take coal in the tunnels underneath to all of the major buildings in Hammond. And they say those tunnels are still there. I haven't found them. I haven't gone exploring or spelunking or whatever you call that. But so it was that. And then several decades later, they attempted to build another housing component in a neighborhood. And that did not turn out, it didn't happen. But the streets, infrastructure, that kind of stuff was there. So through the course of that, I got a vision of what that facility or what that land could be. And so it was all woods. It was just trails through that. Kids would be going back in there. Of course, we're right by the high school and the former junior high there. All of those things were all right there. So I ended up walking around that and walking around it and walking around it and just asking God to give it to us. And through the course of that, the city actually worked a partnership out with a developer, and they took it on, and they asked us, do you have a nonprofit organization? And again, that's when we had InnerMission, and we said, yeah. And they said, well, we need, with the way we're building it and being a part of a community and some of the different section 42 and all of that. I don't want to get too much in the weeds. We all go, our eyes will go back and roll in our heads, or will glaze over. But there were different ways that they were building it, that they needed a nonprofit organization to partner. So what was really interesting is, so many times, one of the things I found out early on is that when I have an idea or a thought, I immediately think I'm going to want doing it. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't. I was just one of the catalysts to be a part of it. I had the nonprofit or the vision component of it, and the other group, the development, they had the know-how to make this all happen and the financial backing to do it. And so we partnered together, and we started out. And one of the very first things we started was a daycare in the clubhouse. And there was, now there's 284 apartment units there, 2 and 3 bedroom, called Douglas Point. Mm-hmm. And they started building the townhomes that are there, and now that we own and we've acquired, and as well as now we've taken and built on more villa units, and now getting ready to build another 19 more there, and then expand out into other areas of the community.
Gotcha.
Through the course of that week, they finally had to move that whole thing over to the college campus near us, because there were so many people. They estimated anywhere from 20 to 30,000 people wanted to come in, because Section 8 hadn't been opened up in so long that they did not have any resources to be able to get any kind of housing. And that's what it was. And immediately I just heard inside of me, there's your well. It was the housing.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed it, please share this content with someone else who would benefit from it. I'm looking forward to having you with me on the next episode. Now go out and create some wealth and real estate development.